Alright, so a couple days ago in BruskTheCone's NHL League on Roblox, a couple players got suspended, and these particular players are very infamous for cheating in the past. These players include GrabSvardo, SnowSvardo, MonkSvardo, and they were suspended in the NHL for accounts of exploiting, particularly using speed hacks. And I thought this was kind of suspicious on Brusk's part as commissioner, that he would suddenly suspend the Svardos like this, especially because the evidence I've seen so far from Brusk is very much lacking. So I'm going to go ahead and just take a look at all the evidence, and actually I will be playing devil's advocate here and I will be defending the Svardos. So let's take a look at the first piece of evidence. So the first piece of evidence we have from BruskTheCone is a screenshot of a graph where we have, at the beginning of the graph, you have a dip in some sort of Y value and it goes all the way down near 0, I assume. That's where the Y-axis starts. So looking at this graph, I actually do not know what this graph even proves. Honestly, this graph looks like it just was made randomly to try to make up some false evidence against the Svardos, and really it just proves nothing because there's no numbers on the graph. All there is a timestamp, so there's only an x-axis, but we can't actually see the y-axis, and we don't actually know what this value is for. So that is a pretty weak piece of evidence by Brusk starting off. Next piece of evidence presented by BruskTheCone is a message saying that the normal speed cap in NHL is 28.003, and so just by that decimal value, I presume that the league runs off of momentum like every other good league. So he says that the speed cap is 28.003, but then he says that Must's speed cap and Monk's speed cap were above that, Must's being 31.508 and Monk's being 31.458, and he said this was tracked by the dev console. The command he uses to track this is print game.workspace. Let's say for example MonkSvardo.humanoid.walkspeed. The reason this is a flawed method to check if someone is speed hacking, and it actually probably proves that someone tampered with it further, is that there is a client to server barrier on Roblox servers, and I will explain what this means. So when exploiters exploit a game, most of the time they have a low-end injector, and so what this injector will do is whenever it injects code into the game, that code is only client-sided, which means that only the player that executed the code can see the results of that code. So let's say that Monk was actually using an injector and he set his speed to that value that Brusk said, then the dev console would not be able to actually track that because the dev console only tracks server values, it cannot track the client values, and since Brusk only executed that line of code which prints the walk speed of the player in the dev console, that is only executed on the server side. So the server actually cannot snoop on the clients, so there's no possible way that Monk could have exploited and it would have been visible on the server, unless the only way it would have been possible is if Brusk printed their velocity magnitude, and he probably actually could have gotten away with this if he said he did, but the problem is he tried printing the walk speed, which is just not right. So what this means is that if he's printing the walk speed and the server is showing it's over the cap, that means someone is tampering with the game, or that value is just straight up false and fake. And the final piece of evidence I have from BruskTheCone, and this one is pretty funny because he makes the same mistake twice in assuming that the server can see client-sided things, and this picture shows that apparently there are scripts inside the arena that aren't supposed to be there and that weren't placed there by the NHL staff. So once again, just a general rule of thumb, if someone exploits, only the exploiter can see those things that they exploited. So there's no possible way, once again, that the server can see a script that someone on the client side created. The server can't see any scripts that a player created, and nonetheless, how would you even have a script that executes after being created? You would have to use source, which is a property of the script that allows you to manually type code, and I'm pretty sure it's actually only read-only, so you can't actually modify that value. I could be wrong though, but I do not think, honestly, that the Svardos are smart enough to know that. I mean, they barely know much about scripting themselves, so I would not think that they would be able to do that. But once again, it is just showing that this evidence is just really fake, but the problem is it's going to work, and it's going to convince people, because people don't really understand how the Roblox servers work and how filtering enabled works. So this evidence is once again false, and those scripts would have had to be placed there by an NHL staff member, considering that the server can see them. So yeah, once again, more false evidence from Brusk, and that's all the evidence he presented. So what's the verdict after all of this evidence? Well, I've refuted all of Brusk's evidence, and there are a lot of possibilities for what could have happened. The Svardos could actually be speed hacking, although unlikely because of the conditions that the games were in. It could be possible that Brusk lied himself and tried to tamper with the game to get the Svardos suspended, or it could be an NHL staff member, someone on the development team, who did that to try to rig the league so that he could gain an advantage over everyone else. I do not really know what happened. If Brusk isn't guilty, I think he really has to consider the idea that someone on the NHL development team is trying to rig the league by getting people suspended for exploiting. If it's not that, I think Brusk really needs to own up to his mistake. Just let the good players play in your league, man. That's all they want to do in this tough time where we have COVID-19 rampant. That's really all they want to do. They just want to play row hockey. So don't remove them from your league if they didn't actually do anything. And I think the Svardos should be unsuspended, and I think they are not guilty. As much cheating as they've done in the past, I think they have started to reform a little bit. And I don't think they are the kind of people to exploit. They are very talented players. I don't think they need to exploit to gain an advantage over everyone. But yeah, I think that the Svardos are not guilty, and I have pretty much refuted all evidence that proves they're guilty. So I request that the NHL unsuspends the Svardos, and I hope that you guys, even though as much as you may hate the Svardos or you want your team to win, I think you guys should do the right thing and try to start a movement to get them unsuspended. They are very good players. They don't deserve to be done like this, and just have it in yourself to think about what's fair and not what's best for you, because it's not always doing what's best for you that is going to make things fair. So unsuspend the Svardos. They are not guilty, and that is me playing devil's advocate for a group of people who have admittedly cheated a lot throughout the years, but I think this time they are innocent.